everyone, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Taylor. I love teaching women how to use peptides, how to optimize their hormones, lose fat, and build muscle all at the same time. So thanks so much for joining into this video. I have not sat down and done a screen share slide video in a while, sharing with you guys today about my Retatrutide fat loss stack. Now, I purposely did this stack for getting ready for my wedding. Hunter and I got married just 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to share the stack that I did. And when I posted the stack that I did, a lot of people on my Instagram, because the source where I get my peptides from was having a sale, and I shared everything that I use to lean out and cut and get ready for my wedding. And I had so many people asking me how did you stack this? So I am breaking down exactly everything that I did in order to lean out for my wedding. I'm going to be continuing this lean out probably until maybe September. We'll see, but I'm definitely going to be pushing myself to lean out, continue this lean out cycle until at least the end of July, just because in the end of June and beginning of July is when Hunter and I are going to go on our honeymoon over to Italy. So I still want to keep pushing myself to lean out a little bit more and just see how much lower I can get my body fat percentage, see how more defined I can get my abs, just so that I can look as great and as confident as possible in pictures while we're in Italy. And we're going to be in bathing suits a lot. So I definitely am going to be continuing this lean out. Now, leaning out is something that I do around this time every year. So this doesn't really change anything. I talk about fitness cycling on my channel, and just because I was getting married, I pushed myself a little bit harder, but I would be pushing myself doing this regardless, because this is the time of year where I always start my lean out process and really push myself to get ready for summer, just because of how much Hunter and I travel. We live in the South, it's bikini season here. So this is just the time of year when I like to focus on leaning out. I'm also going to show you before and after photos of what my body looks like in January versus what it looked like leading up to the week of my wedding. I'll be sharing with you those photos at the end of the video. Now, what's going to be important to remember is that when you see my before and after photos, is that it's important to know that I have been resistance training, weightlifting training for several years now. It's important to know that even though you're going to see that during my bulking phase is that I look thicker, I do have more fat on my body, but you have to remember is that there is muscle underneath that fat that has been years of developing muscle. So my results are going to look different versus someone who is just in the beginning phases of resistance training, proper weightlifting, and proper building muscle. You have to remember when you see these photos is that there is muscle underneath the fat. So once you see that fat come off, that muscle just looks more defined. So it's really important to remember that, but we'll get more into that once we get into the before and after photos. So yeah, let's dive into how I did my stack and paired Retatrutide with multiple different peptides and to get me to the perfect size for leaning out for my wedding. It's important to know that I started this phase in January. My wedding was May 10th. So I am going to be taking you through exactly what all I was doing. I'm also going to be sharing with you my training that I did and hormones and my diet plan, what food items I eat during this phase. So I do want to take the time to kind of break down leaning out versus bulking. I've talked about this a few times on my channel, but it's really important that I want everybody to understand and make sure they get the difference between the two and why it's so important to always have a cycling system and rotating this in, especially when you are using peptides and hormone optimization in your routine. So personally, what I like to do is that I spend the winter months, so usually starting the end of October, beginning of November, all the way until January is a time that I spend mainly focused on what I like to call bulking. So this is my time where I am going to be eating more calories. I'm going to be consuming higher protein, higher carbohydrates, still keeping my fats moderation, because you don't want to be eating too many fats while you are trying to put muscle on, because that can actually, too many fats can prevent muscle development from happening. So I'm still fasting during this bulking time period. It's just I have less days during the week that I'm fasting versus days that I'm in the gym training. Now, what's important to know is that when you're in a bulking phase and you're putting more muscle mass on, you're having to consume more calories. You are naturally going to raise your body fat percentage. That is going to go up when you are bulking. It's just the calories they have to go somewhere. You're going to notice weight gain in your stomach. You're going to notice the weight on the scale going up. And it is just what we have to do in order to put muscle on. But this is a great time when you are cycled off your GLP-1s, I would never try to bulk while being on a GLP-1 on Retatrutide or Tirzepatide, because I don't need and I don't want the appetite suppression. I need to be able to consume as many healthy calories possible for me. So therefore, I don't need that appetite suppression. So that's why I choose to bulk when I'm off of my GLP-1, such as Retatrutide or Tirzepatide. And it's really hard. I think one of the biggest things that women struggle with, women want to gain muscle. I can't tell you how many times I hear women say, I just want to grow a booty. I want my glutes bigger. I want to gain more muscle. Well, in order to gain muscle, you have to, one, properly be training. Training is going to make a huge difference is training, but you have got to consume enough calories. You have to eat more carbohydrates and more protein. And this is something that I see women struggle with for so long. And I get it, that's been brainwashed thinking that carbs are bad for us as women, whereas carbs are so good. It's just getting the right type of carbohydrates in your diet. But clean source of carbohydrates are going to make the biggest difference in putting muscle mass on. You have to be able to consume those calories in order to build the muscle. And that's just something that I just see women struggle with. They have a hard time being able to get enough protein in and getting enough carbohydrates in. And there's definitely ways around doing it. And there's definitely tools that can definitely help. But now when you're in a leaning out phase, which is what I'm in right now, it just means that, my calories are cut down. I'm not eating as many calories as I would be if I was trying to bulk and put muscle on, because right now I'm trying to lose body fat while still maintaining the muscle mass that I have. And you can actually build muscle at the same time as doing this. Not as much, obviously, as it is going to be in a bulking phase, but it's definitely doable. I have proven that you can actually still gain muscle when taking GLP-1s. Taking Retatrutide especially will help you gain muscle while you're leaning out. Retatrutide has completely helped me gain muscle. I have gained almost 7 pounds of muscle on Retatrutide. This was going back last year. I still need to go get my bod pod scan done. I have not gotten that done since January, and I wanted to get that done before I made this video, but planning a wedding and then getting sick right after my wedding prevented me from doing that. But that's okay. But last year when I did that, I was able to lose body fat percentage and maintain and gain muscle. I gained 7 pounds of muscle while on a GLP-1. And people will say that GLP-1s are awful because you'll lose muscle mass. And that's not true if you are not training properly and using the GLP-1s properly. Not to get on a rant about that. But so leaning out basically just means that we're trying to pull and get as much body fat percentage off as possible. This is the phase that I'm in right now. So let's start off with the number one most important part of my stack, and that is hormones. Hormones are the number one foundation to everything. And when I talk about this in my women's group about the pillars of really living optimal, is that it starts with hormones. Hormones need to come first. That needs to be every woman's main priority, is getting your hormones optimized. I say hormones first, then peptides. Now, personally, I was reversed. I did peptides first, and then I did hormone replacement therapy because it took me longer to find the right medical professionals to work with to get my hormones optimized that we were both on the same page and agreed with. The first step to my stack is my hormones. So I take 12 milligrams of testosterone cypionate once a week. Now I have plenty of videos on testosterone therapy. I divide that into 3 doses throughout the week. So throughout the week, my weekly total is 12 milligrams. And that is for me to be hormonally optimized. I am not using testosterone as a enhancement like body physique competitors do. Nothing wrong with that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just using this for hormone optimization for my body to help my body be in the right range. And that's what works for me. This is what works for my body. Each woman's going to be completely different, but that's where I feel the best at. And then I also take 200 milligrams of progesterone capsules every night. So I take these every night. When I first started progesterone, I used to cycle off and only take it day 12 through 28 of my menstrual cycle, but now I take it all the time. I don't cycle off. I don't feel like for me personally, it wasn't beneficial for me to do the cycling. And after switching to my current my current doctor for hormones, we both agreed that I was just better off staying on it all the time and not doing the cycles off. Some women still cycle it and it works great for them. Personally, I don't. And then the other hormone that I take is desiccated thyroid. And I don't know why it says 30 milligrams on the screen. It's actually 60. So I guess I put a typo in there, but I actually take 60 milligrams of desiccated thyroid, and I take that every day. And that is just for thyroid optimization. Did have issues with thyroid function from years of not eating carbohydrates and doing high keto and doing high fat, high protein diet. It completely destroyed my thyroid. And I've talked about that, I think, too, on here. It also destroyed my hair. My hair went through a horrible time dealing with hair breakage and hair thinning when I started to have issues with thyroid. So desiccated thyroid is a non-negotiable for me. I think every person needs to be on it just for optimization purposes, because it is a powerhouse to our hormones. So that is the first step, and the most important step in this entire stack is my bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Now, let's get into what I was using for fat loss, appetite control, and for helping me burn the most amount of fat. The whole reason that we're making this video is Retatrutide, also known as GLP-3. And I started using Retatrutide in January, and I slowly upped my dose over the period of time throughout my leaning out phase in January. So I started off with 0.5 milligrams, and I always divide my GLP-1s same way as I do my testosterone. I divide that into microdosing. So I take a weekly dose and I divide that into 3 smaller shots throughout the week. So it's like every other day. I started off with 0.5 and I worked my way up to 1.5 over the time period of January to May. And now that we're more into May, I'm currently taking 2 milligrams total. This is something that like really most women don't need to go over 2 milligrams. A lot of women feel great at 1.5. Just because I am kind of staying on it longer. That is why I'm now up to 2 milligrams. And basically, so I will slowly up and increase that dosing amount within over like 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even 4 weeks time period. I stayed at 1.5 for a while, and it's just now recently I've upped it to 2. Now, this is going to be the best to help with my fat loss and hunger. This is going to be extremely beneficial also too, because this is also going to help preserve my lean muscle mass and actually help me grow lean muscle mass. So because it's also referred to as GLP-3 is because Retatrutide is able to hit all 3 receptors, whereas in semaglutide and tirzepatide only hit 1 and 2 receptors. So we're able to hit that glucagon receptor, your GLP and your GIP. So that is why Retatrutide is my right now. I always like to say right now because there's always new things coming out, but right now Retatrutide is still my go-to number 1 GLP. The other thing that I added in, as I used for 4 weeks, I used Cagrilintide and I use 0.25 milligrams of Cagrilintide. And if you watched my Cagrilintide video, we all know I didn't like Cagrilintide, but I stayed on it for 4 weeks. And the reason why I use this is that in the beginning of using Retatrutide, because I don't want to start off using my full 1.5 or 2 milligram dose of Retatrutide in the beginning, I want to give myself time to build up to that tolerance. And it takes your body at least a good 4 to 6 weeks to really get used to your GLP being in your system and really start seeing the appetite suppression control. Now, in the beginning, that's challenging because in January, I'm cutting calories. In December and November, I'm eating a ton of calories and now I have to cut my calories. So, it's challenging in the beginning because you're already hungry because you're already cutting calories. Plus, you're waiting for your GLP to kick in. A lot of times, I notice this more with women, will notice an appetite increase when they start Retatrutide, and it's because it's really helps jumpstart your metabolism and your body's getting used to something new being in it, and it thinks that it's hungry, but it's actually because it's able to burn more energy. Now, that is where Cagrilintide came in and why I used it to really help with the food noise. Cagrilintide isn't going to really help necessarily like with the fat loss, but it's going to cut down all food noise. And it just works on a different receptor. It works on your amylin hormone. I tried that for 4 weeks and we all know I didn't like it because it did affect my serotonin levels. Plus, being in a calorie deficit, that's already going to mess with your serotonin levels too. So I only stayed on that for 4 weeks. And then I just stopped taking it. I didn't do any winging off or anything like that. I just stopped taking it. And then the other thing that I used is that I use Shred and MetaShred. These are two really great small molecule products that you can find if you are interested in this. These products are all linked in the description in my Linktree account in my description bar below, where you can go find where you can get these products. You can also sign up for my email list. I share where I get all my products on there. I don't share them on the videos. MetaShred and Shred are similar but very different products. So in January, I was using Shred, which is also known as Sloop, which is SLUPP332. And this is a capsule version. I like the capsule version. You can do a liquid version. Personally, I like the capsules. And then around March, which I think is when we launched MetaShred, I honestly, don't kill me, but I don't remember when MetaShred launched. And I probably should have found that out before I put this in there, but I use Shred up until MetaShred came out. Once MetaShred came out, I switched over to it. MetaShred is Sloop with BAM15, which that makes a huge difference when you were trying to lose body fat is having BAM15. I think that I have tried BAM15 by itself. Honestly, I can't give it a fair review because I didn't use it long enough by itself because it's just was so hard to find. So I only had access to it for a tiny bit and then didn't have access to it anymore. And then I waited till MetaShred came out. And when you pair BAM15 with the Sloop, they just pair very well together. Some people argue it and say that it doesn't. I think they pair great. I actually feel like I actually can feel something going on, but the BAM15 is literally going to melt the fat off. You're not going to feel any type of stimulant feeling from either of these products. You're just going to notice a hardness. You're going to notice the muscle definition popping. You're going to notice, waistlines getting smaller. I noticed a huge difference once I started adding MetaShred into this stack. Now, for energy levels and to help with energy throughout this stack, I also started using Injectable 5-amino, which is probably one of my favorite peptides right now, but I started using this in February. I wish I had used this instead of Cagrilintide. I used Injectable 5-amino back in December. Basically when we had it sent to us through one of our friends. We didn't have access to it. We just got sent one bottle, tried it. Oh, wow, this actually really helped, gave me appetite suppression. February time period, got access to it, and I started using that. But what I noticed is that it helps so much more with your energy. So I started off using 500 micrograms for the first 2 weeks, and then I upped it to 1 milligram. So that was also added in. And then I also added in twice a week NAD plus. Now, NAD plus and injectable 5 amino, they pair so good together. And this is going to be super beneficial for energy levels, because when you are in a calorie deficit and you're leaning out, like, you don't have as much energy. You're exercising, your body's stressed out more. So it's really important to go in and replenish your body and work on your cellular energy. And it's also going to have great anti-aging benefits. So NAD plus, I would use 100 milligrams of this twice a week. And I would inject this intramuscularly into my glutes, which ends up being like a full syringe. So it's definitely something that you don't want to do sub-Q. You're going to get bubbles, not going to be comfortable injecting that much. And by injecting intramuscularly, it just actually works better because it gets to your bloodstream faster than doing it sub-Q. Very important topic here too is growth hormone and recovery. Growth hormone is so important, and it's so important to be using this when you're all year round, in my opinion. But growth hormone peptides that I was using was, I used ipamorelin and CJC blend. Now, I know some people, they don't like the CJC. If you don't like the CJC, that's perfectly fine. Ipamorelin by itself still is amazing, but they pair ipamorelin and CJC together with no DAC. I should have put that in the slides, but I use CJC with no DAC. I don't like DAC. DAC actually has a lot more negative side effects. Yes, you don't have to use it as often, but your system gets blasted with it, and it can have more of the negative side effects of just like the flushing, the nausea, the increase in heart rate. So that's why I don't like to use the CJC with DAC. I use it with no DAC. That's just my personal preference. There's no right or wrong here. It's just what I do. And using that along with ipamorelin, why I like to pair these two. I've used ipamorelin by itself. I personally like it with the CJC no DAC, because when you use it with the CJC with no DAC, you actually get a little bit of a flush feeling. I personally like that. My chest gets a little warm. I like it because it makes me feel like I can feel something happening. So I know something's working, and it relaxes me. That's just me. I know people that don't like that feeling. They get very panicky by it. But for me, that's just personally what I like. And it helps me sleep, and it relaxes me. It just, for me, it's the perfect bedtime routine. But the reason why they pair so great together is that, the CJC just helps the ipamorelin expand and last longer throughout the body. So these peptides are designed to help with increases your own natural growth hormone production. The CJC just helps the ipamorelin last longer throughout the body, which is why I like to pair them. You can still get just as good and just as great side effects of just using IPA by itself, but I like to use them together. So growth hormone. I also take growth hormone too. So even though I am using a growth hormone releasing peptide, I also supplement with actual growth hormone. And this is, I take 2 IUs every night, and I do that 5 times a week. And I do my ipamorelin 5 times a week in the evening as well too. And then I only stay on my ipamorelin for 8 weeks. My growth hormone, I stay on that all year round. I might cycle off. Typically, if we do cycle off, it's usually around like the summertime. So anytime like I'm traveling, if I know I'm going to be like at a beach or in a bathing suit a lot, that's usually the time period where I will cycle off my growth hormone. I use a day, 5 days a week at night. So that's just something that I always do. I always take my growth hormones at night. Some people like taking their like growth hormone peptides in the morning. That's cool too. Me, bedtime and growth hormone, you just sleep so much better. And that is so important with recovery when you're in leaning out phases, is that recovery is so crucial and so important for the body, because you're training, you're pushing yourself more, you're in a calorie deficit. That recovery is so important, which is why growth hormone is definitely incorporated. Now, another thing that I like to take is injectable glutathione. Now, a lot of people complain about how painful glutathione is to inject, but I inject this intramuscularly. So I inject this directly into my glutes. Yes, you can. I get a little lumpy. So The reason why I get a lumpy is because I'm injecting 200 milligrams at a time with this. So it's essentially a full syringe, and glutathione is a little thicker. It's not fun to inject. Not gonna lie. It's definitely painful. I have found a source for glutathione, which is probably the smoothest glutathione that I have yet been able to inject. So that will definitely be in the email after this video comes out. I will have an email come out after this video about sources for all this. So check out that email. Don't forget to sign up for my email list if you're not already on there. That way you can find out which products that I'm using in this video. Inject glutathione 200 milligrams once a week, typically on Sundays. This is going to help with antioxidant, and it's also going to help with detoxification, which is so important when you are leaning out. I mean, glutathione is just, I think it's just mandatory now that everybody needs to be using it just because of awful stuff in our environment. That's just me personally, but I will do it every Sunday. Another little tip that I found with injectable glutathione is if you let your glutathione kind of sit in the syringe for a while. So I'll withdraw my glutathione, have it sitting in the syringe, and then I'll basically leave the syringe sitting on my counter for a good 30 minutes. Let it get to like, essentially let it warm up to like room temp. It helps the consistency get a little thinner, and so it's not so painful to inject. And then another thing that I also like to do is that after I inject the glutathione intermuscularly, I will take my massage gun and I will go over that area. It's a little painful, but it does help break it down to where you don't have so much scar tissue and lumps. Now, let's talk about pre-workout, because that makes a huge difference. And I realize I don't talk enough about pre-workout on the channel, but my pre-workouts that I did during this cycle is I used sculpting cream. So it is BioScope, which again is another small molecule product that is an actual cream. I've talked about this before, and I've posted about this on my Instagram. But it is a topical cream that helps with breaking down fat and enhancing muscle tones. But I always apply this to my abdomen area. And then I always apply this onto my glute ham tie-in area, because this product definitely makes a difference with muscle definition and helping with dissolving those fat pockets. And I also will put this like on my back area, just like where I like say like I have more of like the bra roll. And that's just something that like, honestly, like that area is a tough spot for me. It's just that's where I naturally have larger boobs. So that back area is just going to hold more fat. So I always like applying it to my back bra roll area. Ladies know what I'm talking about. I always apply it there. I always apply it onto my stomach and then onto my glute ham tie-ins, and it makes a huge difference. I notice a huge difference with my abs. I apply it before I do my cardio, and then I apply it before I do my weight training sessions. That is my pre-workout cream that I use. And then for my pre-workout injection, I prefer a pre-workout injection. There are some great pre-workout drinks. If I am going to drink a pre-workout drink, I used to make my own blend, but I now use Unmatched, which is Chris Gethin's brand of protein powders, supplements, and pre-workouts. If I'm going to drink any pre-workout, it is Unmatched, because the reason why I am super, super picky when it comes to flavored enhancers. Sounds weird. I don't like the taste of flavored enhancers. I like the taste of just plain water. I'm not a fan. I don't do flavored enhancing drops. A lot of times when I use my electrolyte drops, they're plain. They don't taste like anything. So that's kind of my hang up, is that like I just hate the taste of like any kind of artificial enhancement taste like that. So, but I do like Unmatched. The other issue that I have with a lot of pre-workouts is what they're using in their flavored enhancers, like as far as like the sugar substitute, it can be really harsh on my gut. And Unmatched is very smooth on my gut. It doesn't bother me. I like an injection better because I don't heaviness that I feel from having to drink so much liquid before going into the gym. I'm definitely staying hydrated and I'm drinking, but I just like an injection. So what I like to use for my pre-workout injection is that I like to blend in the same syringe. I don't keep them, they stay separate in their bottles, is that I like to use a product called Monster Pump. And I take 50 units of that. And then I take that same syringe and then I pull 50 units of a product called Nectar. These are my two favorite pre-workouts combined together. I've used them separately by themselves and they work really great, but combine them together. So this ends up being a full syringe that I have to inject. Again, the girls in my group are always asking me how lumpy is my butt from injecting all the glutathione and then all of the pre-workout. And I do inject this directly into my glutes, and I will break it up. If I need to go into one glute and then the other, I definitely will, depending on how sore I am. And I even will inject this sometimes into my delts. The reason why I don't inject it a lot into my delts is because anything after 25 units into my delts is just too much for me. So that would be having to do 50 units. That's a lot for my delts. So I typically always inject it just straight into my glutes. But that is the best pre-workout. So by combining all this, having the appetite control, having, preserving my muscle, energy performance, hormone balancing, these all work and tie in. It's a whole system that work together in order for this to be achievable as far as like hormone and peptide supplementation go. Now, let's talk about training schedule because that makes a difference. So what I did during my training schedule is that basically I would lift 4 days a week, and day one would be a glute and hamstring day. Day two is typically back and shoulders. Day three is a glute and quad focus workout. And then day four of working out is going to be more of my chest and biceps and triceps. What's going to be mindful and really important now, when I'm in my bulking phase, my schedule changes a little bit. I'm pretty much still probably doing 4 days. Maybe I'll throw in a fifth day, but 5 days of weightlifting honestly is just too much for me. I've worked with coaches that have done that. It's too harsh and too taxing on my body. But what I do is that I change how I lift. So during my bulking phase, I'm lifting heavier weight, lower reps, and I'm going super heavy. During my leaning out phase, I am now going to do the opposite. I'm going to lift a little bit lighter, but push myself to get more reps in and lift to failure. So I'm lifting and trying to get my rep goal being 20 to 15. Then I typically do a drop set. So I'll do 3 working sets. And then my last working set, I do a drop set, which just means that basically I will drop my weight down to whatever my warm up weight is and do 10 more reps with that. And that is super challenging. Now, this next topic is super important is I started incorporating HIIT cardio on my lifting days. This is something that I have fought Hunter on for years. I'm not a cardio person. I have said that I think before on here. I'm not. I love lifting heavy. I love weightlifting. I love moving heavy things. That's what I like. I don't like cardio. I'm not a cardio person. So doing HIIT was something that I really did not want to do. And I fought Hunter on it. And I finally this year during this lean out, first time ever, started incorporating HIIT to my leaning out cycle. And let me tell you what, this is what I truly believe made the biggest difference in my body is adding HIIT cardio at the end of my resistance training sessions. Now, I always added cardio in at the end, 15 minutes of cardio at the end of my resistance training sessions, but I never incorporated HIIT. And you don't want to do HIIT on fasting days. Let's be clear. I don't know why people think that's a good idea, but it's not. You definitely want to do HIIT on days that you are going to be consuming calories. And this is where it's going to make the biggest difference, adding HIIT cardio in at the end of your training session on literally melting the fat off. This is the key of getting that off. So at the end of every training session, I did 15 minutes of HIIT, and I usually did the ski machine, which is my preferred method because of how much of, training my legs 2 days a week. and how heavy I go with my legs, I'm usually the most sore. So I always like the ski machine. Only that too is that like this really helped get my triceps more defined and really help with cutting my back because I really wanted my back to be really cut for the wedding because of my dress. And the ski machine definitely made a huge difference. And then I would also use the stairs. And then I would also use the assault bike. And the assault bike was my least favorite. And then I would use, I don't have it on here, but I would use the elliptical, but we don't have an elliptical at our home based gym. So if we went to a different gym or if we were at like a gym like traveling is usually when I use the elliptical difference. And you want to know what that made the biggest difference is that I've always had larger calves. Most women have larger calves and my calves have definitely slimmed down since adding HIIT cardio in. And that made a huge difference, I think, too, with just getting the fat off faster. So that is one thing. If you are definitely in a leaning out phase, I definitely suggest adding HIIT. So how I would incorporate my HIIT is that when I first started off, I would start myself off with 8 rounds for the first 4 weeks to get my body used to it. So I would start off by doing 8 rounds of HIIT. So that means I would go for 20 seconds, stop for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, go as fast as I can on my cardio equipment, stop for 10. And then I would do that for 4 rounds. And then I would take a 1 minute rest where then I was just, just lightly moving my body or even stepping away from the machine. And then I would do again another 4 rounds of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And now I have essentially worked my way up to where I do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And then I actually will rotate and do 1 minute on, 1 minute off. So that's just something that like, that's actually really cool to see my progress that I've made from January being able to like, I mean, I was dying just doing doing the 20-second rounds. Now I can push myself to do a minute on, a minute off. Now on days that I was not weightlifting, I was fasting. So typically, I was lifting 4 days a week, fasting 3 days a week. Now, if we were traveling, we would adjust as needed. So there were times that I was only lifting 3 days a week and then fasting 4 days a week. So typically when I fast, on my fasting day, I fast for at least 20 hours. I don't go over 20 hours, anything over 20 hours for any woman who is perimenopausal, or in menopause. You don't want to go over 20. You really want to try and push yourself to, my opinion, to at least hit 18, 16 minimum. The reason why I say minimum 16 is because your body does not hit ketosis until it's 16 hours into the fast. Therefore, I like to push myself to 18. That way I still have time to be in ketosis and burn the fat that is stored. And then 20 is just really ideal. Now, I have been fasting for 4 years now on for regularly, like it being part of my routine and lifestyle. So, for me, it's a lot easier. It took me a long time to be able to get comfortable with that. And if I still feel like, depending on where I'm at in my menstrual phase, if I'm in my luteal phase, it is harder for me to fast. So if I need to break my fast at 18 hours, I definitely am. But I really like to try to push myself to the 20-hour marker. And then during that time period, my sleep time counts for my fasting time, but I always try to get 45 minutes of cardio exercise in during that time. And my cardio typically is done on a treadmill because that's what I have here at the house. And I put it on the highest incline. And for me, it's on a low speed and longer and slower. That's what's going to help burn and melt the fat off. And I do that 3 to 4 times a week. So anytime I'm not training, I'm fasting. Now, the other thing that I do is that this is really important. And this is more of a tip. I probably should have put it in the slides, but I didn't, is that how I do my training is that like, I don't train like 4 days in a row resistance training and then I fast the other 3 days. Is that by what I have found to have been the most successful is doing every other day. Now, if we're traveling, again, that can change. By breaking it up, doing every other day during the work week, it makes it so much easier and it's a lot better on the nervous system. I have tried, again, when I've worked with coaches in the past and it was like, 3 days in a row lifting, and then like one day off, and then it's just 2 more days after that. It's too much. For me, I have found that by doing it every other day, it works better for me personally. Now, diet. What do I eat? Hunter and I's diet are very, very boring. Um, we get well, I shouldn't say I get creative with the cooking. I try to anyways. So basically what I eat on a training day, because that is if I'm the only time I'm eating, several meals throughout the day is when I'm weightlifting and training. So on a training day, breakfast typically varies. I typically eat Vitargo powder, which is a carbohydrate powder, which is amazing. Every woman should be incorporating Vitargo powder. It's a really great, fast, easy way to get carbohydrates into your system. Vitargo powder, it sits very light on the stomach. So especially women that are like coming off of keto or coming off of carnivore diets, Vitargo powder is a really great product to use to gently reintroduce carbohydrates back into your system, because there is an adjustment period of that. Cause I've been there, as someone who used to do keto, and that was a really good smooth transition, but I don't have to worry about that now. But breakfast wise, I either eat Vitargo powder with protein powder, or I'm eating oatmeal, zero oats oatmeal with protein powder. Sometimes I'll add eggs or egg whites to it, or I'm eating egg whites. Typically, if I eat egg whites, I'm eating half a cup of egg whites with one whole egg. And then I'm doing my homemade bread or homemade bagel. And then I always have berries on the side with my breakfast. So organic blueberries, strawberries, sometimes blackberries. And then right after, so that's what I eat in the morning. I train in the morning. So we eat breakfast, and then we train in like the late morning. And then once we are done in the gym, we always have our cooler in our truck. And once we're done with the gym, we have a protein shake. And the protein shake is typically protein powders that I use. I use Unmatched protein. I also will use Podium protein as one of my favorites. I do all grass fed isolate whey protein is what I prefer. Shake with protein powder, Vitargo, and I use oat milk in my protein shakes. And again, that Vitargo powder, again, it's just a way to get that extra carbohydrates to fuel that muscle. Now, when I'm in a leaning out phase, sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually take the 1 scoop of Vitargo and I will actually split it and put it into my protein shake and into my water when I'm training, because adding Vitargo to your water while you're training is just another really great source of just energy fuel while you're training. But sometimes I'll just put the whole scoop in the protein shake. It really just depends on how I'm feeling that day. If I'm feeling a little bit more tired, a little bit more sluggish, I know that I need to add that Vitargo powder to my water, not just to my protein shake. Lunch typically is either organic jasmine rice and chicken breast, or I'll do organic chicken breasts, organic turkey breasts with rice cakes. I don't eat any fat. So if I'm going to eat fat during the day, I'm going to typically eat it before my workout, although lately I haven't been doing that. Or I'm going to save my fats and eat that at dinner. I don't eat fats for at least 4 hours after resistance training, because you want the carbohydrates, because carbohydrates and protein is what's going to fuel the muscle and the glycogen. You don't want to add fats and after you work out, because that can actually prevent muscle development from happening. So I don't eat any added fats. Yes, there's fat in the chicken that I'm eating, but I'm not eating any added fat. So I'm not eating cottage cheese. I'm not eating yogurt. I'm not eating avocados. I'm not eating any kind of oils, like no olive oil or anything like that. I'm not going to eat high fat meats either. So like I would never eat not that I eat ham, but I would never eat ham. I would never eat like a steak or a ribeye steak after resistance training. I actually don't eat beef at all after I get done training. I really try to keep it lean, lean meat and clean carbohydrates. That is going to make the biggest difference on fueling the muscle. Now, years ago, I used to get back from the gym, and this is when I would train when I was doing keto, and I would go into the gym with no food in my stomach at all whatsoever at 5 a.m. Train, lift super heavy, and then come home and eat a ribeye steak with grass-fed butter and thought that was helpful. Now, did I gain muscle mass? Yeah. Did I damage my thyroid? Yes. So, and I actually end up as actually, and I actually stopped developing muscle. It actually was preventing my muscle from developing. Once I cut that out and stopped eating fats after for at least 4 hours after my resistance training session, I noticed a huge difference in muscle growth. So that's why I don't eat them. Don't eat fats after I work out. Dinner. Dinner typically is lean, grass-fed, grass-finished beef. So whether it's either ground beef, shredded beef, steak, or burgers, like that is just something like we always eat grass-fed beef. We will eat sea bass once in a while. A salmon, I love salmon. I don't eat it because it's so hard to find like wild caught salmon now. So, but typically most of the time dinner is going to be beef, and then I'm eating it either with organic potatoes or organic jasmine rice. I've gotten this question before in videos, is that people like to point out that I don't eat vegetables, and I don't. Will I eat a salad? Once in a while, yes, but the reason why I actually don't eat a lot of vegetables is that because there's a lot of toxins and pesticides in vegetables. Even if I'm buying organic, I can still taste the pesticides in them unless the vegetables are homegrown, like, and they're coming from my garden or coming from, I have family members that garden. If I know the vegetables are coming from those garden sources, I will eat them occasionally, but my body does not digest and break them down well. It's actually pretty harsh to digest and break down a lot of, like, especially leafy greens and cruciative vegetables. That's why I don't incorporate them into my diet. I'm still getting all of my vitamins and nutrition through supplementation. In order for me to like get the same amount of vitamins that I would need from broccoli as I could get from a supplement, I would have to eat an enormous, uneatable amount of broccoli to actually be able to absorb and get those nutrients from it. And then that's also just going to upset in my GI system more. So that's why. It's just personally, I don't eat vegetables. People think that's weird, but I do eat fruit. I eat a lot of berries. I eat apples. We do bananas occasionally. So that's just what works for me. My GI system does better that way. So I eat what works best for my body. But I don't worry about being nutrient deficient in anything because I also know how to. So now let's get into the before and after photos. So these photos were taken in January, and then they were taken also up to the week of the wedding. That way you guys these are photos that are, again, to help show the difference between what I look like when I'm bulking versus what I look like when I'm leaning out. So that way you guys can see the difference in the muscle development. So I am sharing these photos. This is very personal. So these photos are meant to help inspire others. This is not at all by any means me trying to show off my body and my physique, because this is just for inspiration purposes. So this picture here was taken in January. Now, it's important to remember is that I have been training in resistance weightlifting training for, again, many years. So I have a lot of muscle development that has taken years to be developed. So if you're somebody that is new to weightlifting, you're not going to get the same results as me. Not saying that like this anything crazy. Again, I'm not a physique competitor. I'm not trying to be in a bikini competition or anything like that. This is just how I trained for living an optimal, healthy lifestyle. So this was in January. So you can see, like, again, I wasn't like, not like I wasn't unhappy with my body or anything like that. It's just that you can see muscle definition is that it's thicker. You can see like in my arms how much bigger just like my biceps are here versus here. You can also see a lot more swelling in my face. My face has leaned out a ton. But even though I still have let's take my biceps. Biceps are still good, but they're just going to be more to cut and fine. You're not going to be able to notice it as much here because of my tattoos, but you can see this muscle definition in here is so much more cut, more definition in the shoulders, versus in here. My triceps are a lot more developed. I wish I had a picture of my triceps, but my triceps have developed a lot. And I think that's from using the ski machine. But waistline, you can see a big difference in the waistline here. Definitely a lot narrow. You can see ab definition in right here versus you can't see it as much there. Again, not that there's anything wrong with how I look here. It's just that this is what I look like when I'm bulking and putting muscle on. This is what I look like when I'm leaning out. It's also not healthy for me to look this lean at all times because I always want to be able to develop muscle and to grow muscle. So that's why we do these bulks, the bulk process. You can see leg definition is a lot more cut in here. But yeah, so this is just you can really see a huge difference. Waistline, inflammation in the face, and more muscle definition. My arms have definitely leaned out a lot. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how I look right now. Again, I would like to see my abs become more defined. And I didn't say this earlier, but I typically try to do abs. I do abs anytime I'm weightlifting training. And then I try to also incorporate abs on my fasting days too. So essentially it's doing abs almost every day. Sundays, I'm not always the best about doing them, but definitely on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because those are my yoga days, I'm definitely incorporating abs in there too. Now, as far as side angle shots go, because this kind of shows a little bit more muscle development wise, is that again, you can see the leaning out of my arms have gotten better. My back has gotten leaner. You can tell a little bit in the back in these pictures, but the main difference here is that I want you guys to see is the glute difference. Yes, my legs are obviously a lot fuller here during my bulking phase, but look how much rounder. And it's hard because this is where I struggle with body dysmorphia, is that when I'm leaner, I feel like in my leggings, my butt looks smaller. And so I'm constantly asking Hunter if my butt's shrinking. And it's not that my butt is technically shrinking, but look at it's definitely, there's a lot more fullness here. A lot more fullness in this area versus here. It's still full, but I don't have the round definition in here. And also too, that glute ham tie-in is leaned out a lot. You can definitely see there's more quad definition and that muscle's able to pop. So that's really the key here, is that when you're leaning out, bulking has a phase. You have to bulk and put the muscle on. And when we take that fat off the body, then we're able to actually see and get more defined muscles. Waistline has definitely slimmed down a ton. I'm very happy with that. So again, I don't think my before, again, I didn't dislike my body before. I was just bulking. So I'm going to be retaining more water. This is what I look like when I use tesamorelin. This is what I look like when I don't have tesamorelin. I talk about how tesamorelin makes me retain a lot of water. This definitely makes me retain a lot of water. You can definitely see in here, I'm not retaining any water. And during this time, I was not on ipamorelin. I had already come off that cycle because I started that in January and I was only on it for 8 weeks. So this is what my body looks like on tesamorelin. So that's where the water retention comes into play, but it's not like I'm not unhappy with those results. That's just kind of the before and after. That's the difference of what I look like bulking versus what I look like leaning out. All right, so there you have it. That is my full Retatrutide stack on what I did for my leaning out phase to get ready for my wedding. So this is a stack that I chose to do. This is a stack that paired really well and worked great for me and my body. So this was definitely just what I was doing. So I wanted to share that with you all, and it has made a big difference. But I would say the key takeaways here is that really hormone optimization is going to make the biggest difference. Really incorporating fasting to your routine. The use and the assistance of Retatrutide obviously is a big bonus, but also don't forget to add that HIIT cardio in. That is going to make the biggest difference as well. So if you guys like this content, please like it and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you are interested in working with me, go check out the Feminine Flow Collective, my private women's group where I teach women how to use peptides, how to optimize their hormones. I give all the details on sourcing for peptides, doctors that I like to work with. I go live every week in the group, and it's just a great place for like-minded women to come together. This is where I also help women design their peptide plans. So if you are interested in wanting to work with me, go check out the Feminine Flow Collective. So thank you guys so much for watching and allowing me to share my journey with you. Hopefully this leaves you inspired and wanting to push yourself to reach whatever goal that you're trying to achieve. So I hope you are doing amazing, and I cannot wait to talk with you again soon.